Let's begin here. There's been mixed reaction to the President's State of the Nation address. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa used much of his address yesterday to take stock of what his administration achieved as South Africa commemorates 30 years of democracy. But as, of course, we're asking you tonight to share your thoughts with us, let's also speak to Dr. Levy Ndou and get a sense from him on whether or not it lived up to his expectations. Thank you so much, Dr. Ndou, for your time. Let's start with the story of Tintswalo. Before I even get into it, what did you make of it?
Good afternoon, Bongiwe. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Well, I think the story of Tintswalo is a story that narrates they call them the freeborn, the born-free children who were born during democracy. And I think what the president has been trying to do was to say government has been able to raise children from very early stages up until they are able to get work and stand on their own to become independent. I think he was also trying to narrate that because of the programs of government since the dawn of democracy, his government or the democratic government has been able to successfully do what most other governments and administrations could not do. But at the same time, it was also a message that says that the government or the democratic government does care for all its citizens, especially the poor and the vulnerable. Of course, it could be received with mixed feelings because not all the children who are born free are actually being proud of the democratic government that we have because of the many challenges that they still face. Indeed, there are those that are quite proud that they are the products of a democratic government, and indeed they've taken opportunities where they could and they've become successful out of that exercise. So
should he not have done that then and paint a true picture of the two Tintswalos that are in South Africa currently? There's a Tintswalo who has taken advantage of all these opportunities, as you say, but there's also a Tintswalo who's an unemployed graduate who is part of those who have even possibly stopped looking for work. So should he not have used this address to take stock and paint a picture of the two Tintswalos in South Africa? One could even argue 3 or even more Tintswalos.
Unfortunately, that is exactly what the president should have done. But I think the purpose for the president was to focus mainly on the successes of government and identify the specific areas where government has been able to make some achievements. And if you look at the State of the Nation address last night, it is closely linked to the message of the ruling party whilst they were celebrating their anniversary, because the focus of the message of the ANC and that of the government today has been to look at the 30 years of democracy and specifically look at the successes of the administration. But at the same time, in the context of the president and the State of the Nation address, fortunately, the president has been able to identify areas where government has not been able to do well, and he kept on saying that, but plans are there in order to make lives better. But indeed, there are those who have benefited out of the system or taken advantage, and there are those who are still living in a situation where they feel that democracy means nothing for them.
There's something else that, is a bit of a puzzle, because the president saying that the end of load shedding is finally within reach. Minutes after that, Eskom announces stage 3. We are now on stage 4. The irony. So how does it paint a picture of a problem that is under control?
Of course, there are people who couldn't watch the State of the Nation address last night due to load shedding. And what we only get on the part of government is the political will and rhetorics that talks to the programs that government has in order to end load shedding. My sense is that if indeed the ANC and indeed the Ramaphosa administration, if there is an area where they need to move very fast and constantly, as they are doing, inform the citizens about the developments, it's on issues that relates to load shedding, because it deals with the economy, it deals negatively with the education, it also frustrates those up and coming small businesses. And you can't talk about building a strong economy where you have got serious challenges of power supply. And I'm aware that President Ramaphosa, his cabinet and his party could be having sleepless nights because they want to ensure that if they have to be praised and be given a fresh mandate, they need to deal with load shedding as fast as possible before even we could talk about elections.
Sleepless nights are one thing, though, but getting rid of the problem is another.
Indeed. The unfortunate part is that you need all the honesty on the part of government and the electricity minister. And indeed, it appears as if on a regular basis, we seem to be getting where we're going. But unfortunately, the courage, the optimism that we get on a regular basis from the minister does not necessarily relate to the reality on the ground, because each time we are constantly focusing or checking our gadgets on when the load shedding is actually going to be affecting us. And indeed, if there is a priority area that government has to look at, it has to be on electricity supply.
There's also something else that he talks about. For example, he says freezing orders of 14 billion rand have been granted to the NPA's asset forfeiture unit for state capture related cases, and around 8.6 billion rand in corrupt proceeds have been returned to the state. You look at the cost that it took for the country to have the State Capture Commission versus this amount of money and the amount of money that was lost by the fiscus through corruption and continues to be. Do the books balance for you when you look at these amounts?
Indeed, they could look not balancing. But the fact of the matter, in my view, is that you still need that political will and the zeal on the part of government to ensure that there are strategies to fight against corruption and all matters associated with state capture. The unfortunate part is that in South Africa, we adhere to the principle of the separation of powers, and those that are in government has to ensure that they create a conducive ground for those that are given the responsibility to deal with prosecution and arrests to do their work. And at the same time, we also need to be, as ordinary citizens, play a part positively in ensuring that any form of corruption, any form of state capture is actually defeated, because as ordinary members of society, we also should not be able to participate in these activities. In the presidential review that was released a few days ago, the president talked about the era of building and reconstruction. And I think if they talk about building and reconstruction, they should actually say we're done with the building. Now it is time for implementation, because what the general population is waiting for is the actual implementation of the recommendations of the SONA Commission, and indeed seeing those that were implicated getting arrested. The institutions created to support our democracy and ensure that wrongdoing does not succeed in South Africa should also play their part in ensuring that the realities of state capture and everything bad associated with it are things of the past.
Very briefly, as we end off, does Tintswalo's story to you remind you of a once South Africa has a good story to tell narrative?
Well, I think it actually depends on where one stands. There are those who are quite celebrating the democracy and who are quite excited that a lot of things have happened in their lives. And equally, there are those who see democracy not in a very, very good light, and they say whatever you talk about democracy is something that I did not benefit from. But importantly, government has to ensure that they move faster in ensuring that ordinary citizens get out of the frustrations and start living better lives.
And let's see then what happens as the president was talking about the successes of the 6th administration. But of course, there's still a lot to talk about. We're going to also be in conversation with one organization that has also been looking at sharply the issue of the SRD grant. But thank you so much, Dr. Ndou, for your time. Do appreciate it. That is Dr. Levy Ndou, political analyst.